Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we have on an amazing soul, originally from São Paulo, Brazil, but now residing in the US. We have Stéphanie Mira on board today. Stéphanie is an evidential psychic medium, animal communicator, spirit artist, and remote viewer. Apart from her spiritual work, she is a magna cum laude graduate with a degree in psychology and has worked for a government agency for many years. She grew up in São Paulo, Brazil, where she enjoyed spending her time in nature, connecting with animals at her family's animal rescue and sanctuary. She has experienced a lifetime of generational contact with the phenomena, psi and high-strangeness, including a group craft sighting at her elementary school, countless orb and craft interactions, visitations from gray, blue, and Mantid beings, screen memories, missing time, scars, and implants. She began to fine-tune her lifelong psychic and mediumistic abilities after her grandfather's passing in 2015. She has studied with many of the world's most respected psychic mediums and attended the renowned Arthur Findlay College in England, where she had a transformative download experience with a beam of light. This marked the beginning of a series of conscious, physical, and out-of-body encounters with a variety of human and non-human interdimensional intelligences, forever interlinking her work with our loved ones in the spirit realm, consciousness studies, star beings, and artistic expression. She is a lifelong student, approaching her experiences as they come, without jumping to conclusions. She has channeled various pieces of writing relating to the spirit realm, consciousness, and quantum physics, which she is currently compiling into a book. She is most passionate about her work as a psychic medium, reconnecting people with their loved ones and animals on the other side, and helping to shed a light on their own anomalous experiences. So, Stéphanie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I didn't mean to give you such a long intro. I don't know what happened.
Thank God I practiced beforehand, but yeah. Before we get into the all the good stuff that you were going to get into, you're like a generational experiencer. So let's talk about your family experiences a bit.
Yeah, so with my great grandmother, there was a lot of stories of what she would refer to as ball lightning inside her house. I remember hearing about that, which again, during my childhood and at the time, it's like, oh, okay, it was ball lightning in her house. But then, as time goes on and more things happen, I'm like, that's not a reasonable explanation. So a lot of things like that. Um, and then with my mom, she also had encounters with this ball lightning. And one specific event that really marked her was she lived in this house where there was like this porch in her room and that, like a screen door that she would open. And she said she was closing it, like facing the outside. And then this, I don't know, like larger than her, like taller than her ball of white light showed up, and she said she was frozen by it, and the door was frozen by it. She was like stopped in her tracks, and that's all she remembers from it. She doesn't really remember how the experience ended. She just remembers that. So that's one of the most impactful experiences she had. She also had like UFO sightings, just the weird lights, strange ships, things like that. All this in São Paulo, down in Brazil. Yeah, so between my great grandmother and my mom and my grandma, there's probably a lot of stories that I can't even remember all of them, but it's kind of how it started. And then, well, in my own childhood, I always remember being really afraid of the whole alien stuff. Just seeing sometimes the images or pictures, it really like would trigger me. I was always really scared of it. I was always really scared of sleeping in the dark. To this day, I can't sleep in the dark. It's a whole thing. But then I wasn't really conscious of any experiences as a child other than seeing a lot of spirits. I would see my great grandfather, just seeing, deceased family members, things like that was just something that was just the natural thing that I always had as a child. But then I think one of my first memories involving the star people would be the incident at my elementary school. And I can't remember if it was third or fourth grade. No, I don't remember what year it was. It was like mid 90s at some point. And we were all outside. It was recess. which I think is funny. I think that's kind of a common thread for like school sightings, right? It was recess. We were all outside. I remember I was jumping rope. I was actually waiting in line for my turn to jump rope because a bunch of us were just playing, like those people do songs and clapping and you jump rope at the same time. So I was just kind of zoning out in line, and then I just look up and I saw this ship, and it was the cliche, like the silver disc kind of ship. I remember like everybody was pointing, we were all looking at it. There was teachers there, teachers and students and everything. And I remember the sun like hit it at some point, and I could really see that there was like a curvature at the top. I was really able to see the shape of it. And that's my last memory of the whole event. I don't know what happened after. No one talked about it after. So I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't remember. But I do know that later on, like more recently, when like receiving readings from other mediums that I work with, that experience came up while somebody was remote viewing a scar that I have in my arm, and I have a screen memory about. But this person knew nothing about that. They were just remote viewing my scar, and they started talking about that school experience that I had. So I don't know for sure what went down. I do remember that there were some pine trees, in the distance, like I don't know, a few, maybe, I don't know. I'm bad with distance, but there's some pine trees, like kind of like maybe like 2 houses away, from where we were standing. And I remember seeing it against the sun, and it was kind of at the top of the pine tree, kind of, so it was pretty low. It wasn't that far out at all. Yeah.
Okay.
And we were I could see it with the naked eye, I could see the shape and the reflection and everything. So yeah, I guess a little taller than a large pine tree.
Okay. Reminds me of the aerial school incident, I think in South.
Yeah. Yeah. Except in my case, again, like nobody talked about it after. I don't even remember going back. I don't remember anything after. As far as I know, it was just a normal day after that. But yeah.
Did the school like receive visitations from the military after that, just to shut you up?
Not that I know of. And it was a Seventh-day Adventist school, so it was very religious as well. So I wouldn't be surprised that, nobody would want the attention. They wouldn't want to talk about it. They wouldn't invite any more, research into it, really, because really it would go against the whole school. So, but no, not that I know of, nothing like that.
Okay. So what happened after that?
Yeah, what happened after that? Let me look at my notes. Oh yeah, a lot of orb sightings growing up. A lot of orb sightings. One of them that stood out to me was I was just walking to my grandmother's house, just walking up her driveway. It was like an inclined driveway, and I'm just stopped frozen by this, again, very, very large yellow orb in that case, like larger than me. It's hard to describe the exact size, but just very, very large. And I just remember hearing that everything's going to be okay, that I was going to go through a lot of abuse and difficulties in life, which didn't make sense to me at the time, but it was kind of a warning, and that I wouldn't be alone, to just always know that I was guided and protected, and that I was going to have to go through certain things, and then to just know that I wasn't alone through it all, which really stuck with me.
Wow. So you heard this telepathically?
Yes, all the communication, I think 90% of the time is just all telepathically like that. And I would also, a lot happened at my grandmother's house because I would spend a lot of time just alone in the garden, just with nature, really. And I would just look at the sky and know that I was receiving communication. I didn't necessarily always see something, but it was usually just in this support, just kind of knowing that things were going to get hard, but you're going to get through it. So it's always very kind, very supportive. Yeah, and just this constant feeling that I'm not alone, which is nice. But at times when I was young, I remember just really wanting to be alone and never being able to truly have that feeling, like always feeling like you're being watched. You're always observed. There's always someone there, which, there was spirit, but I also believe that there was more. There was more than just spirit. It's all intermingled. But yeah, so my childhood was always like that, just orbs, not feeling alone, but then receiving messages of support. Yeah. don't know if I'm forgetting something. I could be, but
You know if you're like
um,
from somewhere else, like your soul's from somewhere else?
you know, I think I think we all are to some extent. I feel like I think part of the disconnect in just in my personal opinion is that we want to categorize and separate so much. But I really think the overall lesson at the end of the day, and it seems like a point that they try to really express, is that we are all one and we're more connected than we imagine. And I think that we have had different lifetimes in different planets. I do believe that. I think that we all have affinities, maybe to different beings and to different existences. But I really think that our main focus should really be that we are human and we're here for a reason and we're here now. And I think we all are from somewhere else, I guess, at some point to answer the question. But I also think that it doesn't really matter. I think it's more of like us trying to compartmentalize into something that makes sense. And I think a lot of the experiences, I try so hard not to do that, to not compartmentalize and to not allow my brain to just, connect the dots because we want to connect them so badly. I think we often connect them incorrectly, or we just add things, or, yeah. So that's my opinion on that. Let me see if there's anything. Oh, okay. I guess there's a couple more things about my childhood, and then I can move on to like the more present stuff. Um, so well, two things with my childhood is I started to get, like in my teenage years around high school, I started to get a lot of premonitions of things that, were so obviously a premonition, like down to specifics as to what someone would be wearing, an interaction that would take place, and what clothes they had on, and things that they would say, like very, very obvious premonitions. Funny though, nothing of high importance, just maybe things that my heart wanted to know about, things connected to relationships and things like that. So I think wherever my focus was, I would receive the premonitions, but it was enough to really show me that there's something else out there in reality. So as much as I always try to be more scientific, more logical, knowing that premonitions were real, from firsthand, it always kept my mind open to there's something more. And so I think that was really helpful for me to kind of ground and base experiences off of the fact that there is more. So I don't have to always deny myself, or naysay myself, because I try to stay as logical as possible. And I think, if somebody were to ask me 10 years ago about the star people, I would have just thought that they were crazy, even though I was having experiences myself. I think a lot of us are like that. We gaslight ourselves. And then another thing that would happen to me in my teenage years is that I would have this really, really weird gum like mass that would come out of my nose periodically. And I went to doctors about it. And nobody could figure out what it was. And it looks like, I don't know how to explain it. It looks like a piece of gum. Like it's like a rubber. It's like rubbery. And it would just come out. And it was kind of a painful process, like it would be like in my sinuses. And I don't know. If any doctors are listening and they know what that is, please tell me. But I did go to doctors at the time. I had x-rays and nobody could figure out what this thing was that would come out of my nose. So I think that's most of it that I can think of with my childhood at this time, unless something else pops up later.
Do you have an example of a premonition that you had that you might want to share?
Yeah, so like I said, none of them seemed very important, because I think a lot of it we wonder like, oh, for me to have this premonition, it must be something, super big, super important, but it really wasn't. I think it was more of like just my own soul showing to myself what is possible and what abilities that everyone can have, and so one of them was I had a really big crush on this guy. And I think that premonitions do connect to where our attention goes. So I had a big crush on this guy. So my subconscious was concerned about him, right? And so I had this premonition that I was going to be shaking his hand. And there was this feeling of like ice cream. And I was going to be shaking his hand and saying hello. And that he was wearing this red and white striped shirt, like very like red and white striped shirt. And I was like, okay, that's very obvious, like specific thing, right? But I had no idea how this was going to happen, because even though I had a crush on him, we weren't really like close friends or anything. It's not like we were hanging out. And then I don't know how many days later, a couple of days later, a week or so, I'm hanging out at the mall with my mom, completely random. And these guys from school show up and they're like, "Oh, can you give us a ride to this ice cream place?" And I was like, my mom was like, "Okay," so my mom gives them a ride to the ice cream place. And when we get there, it's the freaking guy that I had a crush on is working there, and he's wearing the uniform, which is a red and white striped shirt. And because I dropped off his friends, like we should, like the whole thing happened. And I was like, there, how could I come up with a red and white striped shirt? Like, where is that coming from? I had no idea he worked there. I had no idea. I'd never even been to that place before. So stupid stuff like that.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I guess other things too, like just a general feeling of if something was going to happen or not, which I didn't even think about. But then there's one instance that was kind of peculiar. My mom and I were recently talking about it. So she was dating this guy, after her divorce, she was dating him, and I hadn't met him yet. It was kind of new. They maybe been seeing each other for a couple of weeks or so. And I was visiting her in her town, and we're at Applebee's, and we're just sitting at Applebee's, and she's telling me about him for the first time. And I don't know how many people you can fit in Applebee's. It must have been like between 50 to 100 people there. The booths, the tables everywhere, it was full of people. And so she's like, and so I met this guy, and, he's really nice, and just talking about him like that. And suddenly she said, I don't even remember exactly what I even felt, but she said I was just sitting there and I just look at the distance and I'm like, that's him. And I point at a random guy at the restaurant. And she turns and she's like, "Oh my God, that is him." Like, it was the guy. It was the guy that she was talking about. And I don't know how I knew. And first of all, the coincidence that he's there while she's telling me about him for the first time. Second of all, that I'm randomly like in the middle of 100 people, that's him. It was super weird. But I think it just goes to show like what is possible when we are just centered and connected. And I probably was getting bored with what she was saying, and I started to zone out, because it's when you zone out that the magic happens, right? So when we're really connected. But yeah, nothing of high importance, like, world events or things like that yet anyway. But yeah. More recently, it kind of started consciously. Like, I started to be more aware of it around the same time that my mediumship started to take off. So, I was seeing spirit. I knew to some extent that there has to be an afterlife, especially after all the premonition experiences. I'm like, okay, there's more out there. I stopped questioning my sightings, my spirit sightings. I'm like, okay, it's real. It is what it is. But I didn't spend too much time thinking about it. I was living my life. But then after my grandfather passed, my mediumship became a lot stronger, where I was getting actual messages, as opposed to just feeling spirit, seeing spirit. I was receiving, like telepathic communication, not just from him, but then it just opened me up more to, guides and things like that. And so it was through a dream after I started opening up that I learned about the Arthur Findlay College. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know it was a thing that you could learn, to unfold your mediumship further. I didn't know about anything. And then after having the dream about the school, I went and researched it, and I saw it, and I was like, holy shit, that was the building in my dream. And interesting, destiny kind of worked, where I was able to get a trip and go to England unexpectedly. Like, I was supposed to go somewhere else that got canceled. I had this ticket, just it all worked out, and so I went there. And so I was very new to mediumship at that point, just a few months, where it just kind of started. It just started on its own. I wasn't seeking it out. I just started to get messages. And so I'm at the school, and it's the first night, and when you stay there, you get roommates. Well, I did. You can choose, but I got roommates. And so we're sitting there in the room, and we're going to sleep, and we didn't do any exercises or any mediumship stuff yet. We just met, and it's the first night, everyone just kind of getting settled. And like I said earlier, I have a really hard time sleeping in the dark, but other people don't. So out of respect for them, it was very dark in that room. And I was like, oh shit, here we go. But then, okay, so I'm sleeping, and then Actually, I forgot this part. Before I even got into the airplane to go there, I saw this purple column of light in my house, like as I was heading to the airport. And I was like, well, this is really intense. I didn't necessarily know if it was, star people or spirit. I just felt a lot of support from the energy. And it was just from ceiling to floor, just like purple, very bright. Um, Now I believe it is connected to the mantis being that I feel around me often. But at that time, I just knew that it was supportive. And so I knew that stuff was going to happen on this trip. And so there I am on the first night, and we're just sleeping. And in the middle of the night, I'm just sleeping on my back. I get woken up by what is a very familiar feeling now, but that was the first time I truly felt it, where it's you're kind of paralyzed by this sound vibration. There's light, there's this hum, but it's such a strong hum that it's your entire body, and it almost feels like you're just levitating with it. Um, and I am kind of half asleep, half awake at this point, because the intensity of the vibration kind of woke me. And as I look up, I'm still laying down. There's this like flat beam of light coming into my head, like from the ceiling into my head. It's like maybe 2 feet wide, flat like this. And in this beam of light, there's all these symbols and that I don't recognize and I couldn't replicate, but they were moving very fast into my head. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is what people mean when they say download. Because up until that point, I thought it was kind of a ridiculous term, like, oh, I got a download. I'm like, there's no other way for me to describe this other than it's a freaking download, because it was literally coming into my head. And I feel now that it was connected to my mediumship work, because I was there to, develop and unfold my work with spirit. And it seems that the star beings, they are like for this work. Like they help me not to be a medium, but they help me to remove blocks or become aware of my own abilities in an easier way. It almost like they pave the way so that it can flourish. And so I feel like there's a connection with it in one way or another. And so I had that beam of light download, and I fell back asleep. Which is the great thing about all these experiences. Somehow we always manage to fall back asleep, right? And then I had a dream about a tutor at the college whose last name is Manship. And the irony of this didn't occur to me until years later when I was telling someone the story, because my roommate who was sleeping next to me, she woke up and she had a dream with the same guy. Like we both had a dream with this tutor whose name is Manship. And I was like, well, they really have a sense of humor to give me this, starving experience and then have us both have a dream of someone with a name Manship. But I don't know what that was about. He wasn't even my tutor. I didn't have a class with him or anything. It was just a coincidence that we both had a dream of him. And she didn't remember anything unusual about the night other than the dream. But I don't know, maybe she had an experience as well and she just didn't recall. I don't know. So that's kind of how it started more in recent times. And that was 2019. I'm gonna have a drink. So then something kind of interesting that I noticed when I was making the timeline for this is that the really intense experiences seem to be every other year, starting in 2019. So I had one like that download, in 2019, and then 2021 I had a physical visitation, and then 2023, very recently, in the last month, I had more physical visitations. So contact remains in one way or another, but the really intense ones, I just noticed this last night. It's like every other year. So maybe 2025 is my next big one. I don't know. So then after this in 2019, the beam of light, I experienced it, but I still didn't think too much of it. I wasn't trying to categorize it or really, I just knew that I was developing, all of these senses. So I was actually experiencing a lot of stuff, also with spirit and mediumship and, doing readings and things like that. And so I just kept going with it. I kept studying, I kept unfolding over the years. And then I started to attend in 2019, maybe even earlier, No, it was in 2019. It's a group of mediums, and we just have this circle, and we practice mediumship on each other, to unfold and develop. So that when you're reading for an actual grieving person, not the time for you to be practicing. So we just practice, amongst each other, and we try different exercises and etc. And so I've been in these groups for almost 6 years now, 5 or 6 years, I don't know. And so starting in 2019, I was consistently going to one group, and it was around 2021 where my next big experiences happened. And the interesting thing about that is that they started, it started with a reading that I received from a medium. Her name is Jennifer Ankley. And we were just in one of these practice groups, and she had my grandfather, and she started to describe him. It was very evidential reading. I do have the recording somewhere, which is cool, but he starts to talk about how around September or October, the reading was done in July of 2021. And in the reading, he starts to describe about how around September, October, there was something big that was going to happen with me and my mediumship, and it was going to help me, expand my work and to just become more of who I'm meant to be, in this lifetime. And he also kept showing her stars and numbers and like algorithms and things like that. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of cryptic. Sometimes messages from spirit, I like that. But it was a heads up that there was something connecting to stars that was going to happen around September, October, and it was positive. And I was like, okay, cool. So I just, I kept that reading, and then, kind of, again, forget about it, keep doing your work, keep doing whatever you're doing, and then let me just see if there's anything. Oh yeah, in the meantime, I do a lot of automatic writing as well, where I just, I just hold a pen, and I just allow spirit to even like 70 to 90% move the pen themselves. Like I'm not even writing, and I'm just giving the energy, really. And I was getting a lot from my own grandfather about communication and about not being afraid. A lot of their work is just trying to get me to not be afraid, because I've been such a scaredy cat from the beginning. But so I got that reading from my friend, and in the meantime, I was getting all of this automatic writing about bridging the gap between spirit and us who are incarnated and the star people. And it just feels like there's an entire encouragement for everyone to realize that we're not as separate as we think. Even the deceased and the living, we can rise closer to them. And I feel like the conclusion of all this might be at some point that, it's maybe the next step of humanity is to just vibrate higher as a whole, which makes us closer to our deceased, which I feel like they share a dimension, they share a frequency with the star people. And so I think all of us are just going in that direction. But anyway, so in 2021, like the reading said, I think it was either on my birthday or the week of my birthday, which is in late September. I was this one, like after this experience, I couldn't go to sleep for like a whole year. But I was in my bed, and my partner was sleeping next to me, sound asleep as usual. He doesn't have memories of experiences, so he has no problem sleeping. And I'm just sitting there, and I just like suddenly I feel it. I'm like, they're here. Like I could just feel it. It was like somebody turned on like 100 of old televisions with the glass top on channel 3, where it's just static. That's what the room felt like. It was like static, and it was like I could feel it like on my skin. I was like, there was no questioning. Like I was like, this is not spirit. It's different. They feel more. I don't know how to explain it. They feel more solid than spirit, because sometimes we get chills from spirit communication, but it all feels very watery, but with the star people, it's just a little more dense than that. So I was like, they're here. Like there's no questioning it. And one thing that they teach us with spirit communication is if at any time you're uncomfortable, or if you're feeling pain, because sometimes they give us messages by physical sensations, right? You can always say, hey, back off, or hey, not now. And spirit respects that. They listen to it. But I remember I was like, they're here. And I was like, no, no, no. I really didn't want the experience at that time. And I remember that it just kept getting stronger and stronger. I was like, man, they have their agenda, whether I say yes or no at this point. Now, saying that, I do believe that I have said yes, on a larger scale. It's not like I don't consent to the contact, but I feel like at the time, it's like I'm a cat at the vet and it doesn't matter. But anyway, so I was laying in bed and I started to feel that. And I get so terrified at that time that I turned the light on and I stood up and I'm just like, that's it. I'm just not going to sleep. I'm just going to sit here. And I couldn't. There's no way that I could. I just couldn't. Um, so that's how I was feeling this vibration, sitting up with the light on. And the next memory that I have, I am looking at the being at my bedroom door. So I don't know. My feeling is that they were there and they either took me out of my body or put me in a trance state or something so that I would calm down and be able to interact, because otherwise I was too petrified. So I'm sitting there in my bed. Next thing I know, I'm looking at the being at my door. And it looked like a gray, but darker skin, like a dark gray color. And it was a bit shorter than me, but not much. So it's probably like maybe 5 feet at the most. So I think, taller than a lot of people report the grays, but yeah, it wasn't super short. And then, so I see it from the bed. I see it at the doorway. And then, like the memory is like, it's like different slides in my head. It skips. So I'm seeing it at the door. And then the next thing I know, I'm in front of it. And then the next thing I know, I'm floating toward its eyes like this. It was like the eyes were pulling me toward it, or my astral body. I feel like they removed me from my body. It was a very light feeling, just floating like this. And so I do remember seeing the full body for an instant, but my main memory at that point is just the eyes. Like the eyes are ingrained in me because they pulled me closer. And then the next memory after, coming closer and closer with the eyes like this is that's when they showed me this hexagon grid. And it was like this electric blue, and it was just like just very large, like all encompassing hexagon grid. And inside each little hexagon was the face of a person, was like a person's existence. And they kept showing me how we all live within this grid that we ourselves have created. Our own energies creates our grid as a collective, and that we have the power to turn on and off aspects of our personality, aspects of our reality. They would show me lights going on and off inside each little hexagon cubicle, each little hexagon grid, and how they can't just switch it on and off for us, but they can help us to remember who we are so that we can fully manipulate and fully integrate and fully create the reality that we want. And I believe that a lot of times when they work on us, that's what's happening. They are just helping us to shed old beliefs or old blocks or any energetic thing that is keeping us from being able to create the reality that we came here to create.
That's intense.
Yes. Yeah. So that was the big one in 2021. Let me see if I forgot something. I think that's about it.
What about the blue beings and the mantids?
Yes. Oh, I guess before I get to that, it was right after this experience that I had where they showed me the hexagon grid and they talked about all of that. That's when I started drawing. I hadn't been drawing with spirit before that, and so I do feel like there's a connection with the star people and creativity and our expression through the creative arts, whatever that means for each person. I really feel like the flow of creativity is how we connect to the grid of everybody and to all there is and to our highest purpose. And for someone it's going to be building furniture, for someone's going to be drawing, whatever it is. But I think that my drawing with spirit was coincidentally or not, I don't know, but it was connected to that experience, that visitation at that time. And after that, I would just sit and I would draw for hours. Like I remember one day I just spent 8 hours like just drawing, just drawing, just drawing. And then later on, realizing that those were real people that I had been drawing, I would feel this nudge to send it to a friend, be like, hey, do you recognize this person? And then they'd send me a photo, or even some of them I sent to my mom. And it turns out they were my own ancestors that she had pictures of that I didn't know.
So do you offer this as a service when you contact whomever if the person wants to
So
contact?
right now I'm not offering it as a service like for private readings, but I do it for free online on my Instagram. I just do drawings for the followers, and then they recognize the information that comes through, because usually comes through with validating information, specific information about the spirit person and the drawing, and then they submit a photo and then we compare it. And it's all online, but I don't offer it as a specific guarantee, I'm going to draw your person. Right now I let the spirits guide and tell me who's coming, and then I just draw it. But yeah.
Okay. You sent me
Yeah.
a drawing about the hand of a gray with a heart in it.
Yeah, so that experience was also 2021. Okay, so yeah, I was gonna forget about this whole story. So after that hexagon grid experience, a couple of months went by. So I don't know if it was early 2022 or what, but I was taking a class in spirit art class, where we practiced drawing for other mediums. And this one girl, I can't remember her name, but she was a great medium, and she made a drawing for me. And she kept saying, like, in the class, it was in the UK, so for me it was at like 4 a.m. And she kept saying, you have to finish your transformation. That's what the channeling message that she was getting. And I was like, ooh, okay. I'm always a bit hesitant, I'm just like trying not to overthink these messages and just kind of move on with my life. But then after that class, I was so tired because it was 4 a.m. I went to take a quick nap. And as I'm about to fall asleep, and my cat was laying right next to me. And it's so funny about these experiences. Like she was just so calm that it helped me to stay calm when I start to feel stuff's happening. I'm like, if my cat's okay, it's probably okay. So she's just laying right next to me, and I'm on the bed just trying to take a nap. And that's when I immediately go into a trance state. And I know I'm in a trance state because my eyes are just, like fluttering really quickly. Your heart starts to beat really fast. But yeah, you're completely conscious of what's going on around you, but you're no longer like on the bed. I knew that my body was on the bed. I was aware of both my physical body, and then my astral body was in a different room. And that's that drawing that I made with the heart hands. So what happened was I was put in this trance state. I was in this room. There was a lot of copper colors. Um, and there was this, I also drew in that drawing, it's like this glass dome that was next to me. I don't know what it was, but that's what it looked like. And there was a female gray looking being, and she kept making that heart-shaped hands in my consciousness just to calm me and soothe me while they were working on the rest of my body. And I also drew, it looks like there's like four, I don't know, like four pads like that, and they put that over my uterus. And I don't know what they were doing. But I know that that's what was going on while she was showing the heart hands, and she kept just rubbing my head like this. And there was a message. Like when you have sand and it's all rocky, but if you just rub your hands, you can smooth the sand like that. That's kind of the telepathic message that she kept giving me when she was soothing me. It was like, we're just smoothing things. We're just like clearing things. That's what it felt like. So that was a very intense experience that happened kind of unexpectedly out of nowhere. Um, and I remember just wondering and thinking, like, why my uterus? Why would I feel them, putting something there or working there? And I don't have the answer to that, but I think, I guess a lot of people experience similar things with their reproductive organs, but that was that experience, yeah. And I still don't know. I still don't know why I didn't have any weird feelings after. I felt good after. I felt generally good after, and I just kept working on my mediumship, kept working on my work with spirit after that. Yeah.
Ever had any weird phantom pregnancies?
No, but on a different experience that I had more recently this year, I did have something like come out in my urine afterwards. And it was an experience that I shared with two other people. We all experienced it together. But I can go over that in the chronological order after. But no, I don't think any phantom, not that I'm aware of, but yeah, not that I know of.
Okay. Because you, in your bio, you do talk about implants and scars.
Yes. So yeah. I'm just trying to figure out chronologically where to start that. I guess I could mention it now. Like, you know, when I first, let me move her.
Kitty wants to be in the video.
I know. She's the one that was in my trance experience. You know, her talking about her.
Yeah.
So when I first started mediumship back in 2019, where I had the beam of light experiences, I noticed, it's a very weird thing, but I noticed that when I would, you know, get into that vibration to connect with spirit, I would get this pop in my nose. And so it almost started to be where I knew I was ready to do a reading when I would hear my nose pop. And again, I don't know why, it's how it is. I didn't think too much of it, you know, just kind of go with it. And there was some point, I can't remember if it was 2021, 2022, I went just to get a routine cleaning, like just a dentist, you know, visit. And periodically they do that panoramic x-ray. And so it was just happened to be the day for the panoramic x-ray. And she does the x-ray and I see this thing on there. And I'm like, what is that? You know, it was only on this side. It was only on one side. And she's like, oh, that's really weird. You know, I don't know. Like, you know, I'm not a nose doctor. You know, she was just the hygienist. And she's like, I don't know, but that's weird. Yeah, she admitted that it was weird. And then I asked to take a picture of it. And then I took a picture of it. And then later that week, I had another psychic medium remote view the x-ray. She didn't know that what it was she was looking at. You know, she just had a number, you know, and then I just put the picture away like you do with remote viewing. And as she's remote viewing that, she just starts to get all these hits about this shiny purple rock and outer space and something about vibrations, like just random stuff like that. And I was like, well, holy shit, you know, that's very interesting. And then later on, more recently this year during table tipping, we did ask questions about the implants and they confirmed it. Yeah, like I had an implant in my nose. I do believe it has since been removed. Things have been changing, and I had a visitation very recently, just in the last month. And so I think I don't know if I still have it or not, but it does feel a little different. But that's where the implant comes from. And I wonder if it was connected to the weird stuff that would come out of my nose when I was a teenager, you know, that weird rubbery mass. But I don't know. Again, I try to connect dots, but I really don't really know for sure.
So let's talk about table tipping for those that might not know what it's about. What is it?
So table tipping is when, and you can do it by yourself too, but in my case, I did it with two other mediums, and you sit around a table, a pretty heavy table, and you just call upon the spirits that work with you. You can call upon a specific loved ones or your guides or, you know, whoever you connect with. And through your energy, they will levitate the table and they will move the table, and you can ask questions and you can develop a language with it for yes, no, and things like that. And so that's what we were doing. And so we were sitting in the circle around the table, and at the time, we were connecting with my grandfather because he, through spirit, has always been involved in my star being visitations and things like that. You know, it's ever since that first time where it came up in a reading that I would receive a visitation, there were other instances too where he would talk about it. So when he came through doing the table tipping, I was like, well, great, I want to know about this, you know. And kind of skipping back and forth, I'm sorry, but before we did that table tipping that day, we were in California and we went to the Getty Museum, and that's one of the pictures that I sent you of that UFO that kind of looks like the one that the government released. I don't know, you know, it could be a weird glitch with birds. I don't know, you know, but it looks peculiar to me. So, and I think, you know, everyone who's an experiencer understands that, you know, sometimes it's not going to be exact, but I don't know. I thought it was weird and I wanted to share it. So it was the morning before, the day before we were doing table tipping is when we saw that on the picture that we took together. So it was Myself, another medium, Jennifer Ankley, who I also did the reading with my grandfather the year prior, and Eliza Paquette, we were doing the table tipping, and I'm asking my grandfather about the implant. I'm asking about the beings that have worked with me. And then, finally I'm just trying to ask more about the why, like why, are we helping humanity? Like, what are we doing here? And we don't always get yes or no answers like that, but the moment that all of us were asking this question, I can't remember exactly what it was. If it was, are they here to help humanity? It was something along those lines. And we have it on video, and I'm not sharing the video because there's so many of us in there. They're not ready to expose it necessarily, but in the video you can see that all of us like become paralyzed at the same time. Like we were all talking, and then we all stopped talking, and then there was just this feeling of like being put back into our bodies at the same time. Suddenly, like Jennifer comes back and she's like, "Oh, it's so bright," and my other friend was like seeing arms over her arms, putting her back on the table, and I just felt this huge gush of wind, like I was returning to my body from the right side. And I guess the peculiar thing is that it was, simultaneous, all of us together experiencing this. We didn't experience the leaving part. We only came to when we were returning, which is interesting. And after that, I was like deaf on my right side, on my right ear for like a good 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know if it was because the energy was so strong. I don't know where we went. I don't know. I don't remember. I just know that we were trying to get answers to these questions. And then suddenly I think that they gave us answers, but maybe on a soul level, So, yeah, I don't know. I just know that I was deaf on the right ear. And then a couple of hours later, all three of us had like swollen ankles and like weird body symptoms. And um, we looked at the recording so many times trying to see if we could tell, like, when they enter, if they come, when something changes, but really we couldn't. The only thing that we could notice is that we all reacted at the same time. So I don't know how they do it. But that same night, when we went to sleep, I was sharing a room with Aliza, and I was still feeling a presence, And I looked to the wall next to her. She was sleeping next to the wall, and as I looked, suddenly the wall is gone, and it's just a grid. I don't know how to explain. It kind of looked like an Excel spreadsheet almost, where it was closer lines at the top, and as it would get closer to her body, they were wider, almost as if they dematerialized specifically to get to where she is. So I opened my eyes, and that's what I saw, and my immediate reaction is like, oh no, oh no. And I always tell myself to just close your eyes and it will pass. So I'm like, no, no, because ever since my first experience, I always tell them, because it is positive. The experiences are positive. It's my mind thinking about the surprise aspect that gives me the fear. So I'm always like, I will work with you. I just don't want to see your face. I just don't want to see you. You can visit me. I just don't want to see you. So I just close my eyes. And then the next morning, I wake up, and that's when um, I don't want to call it an object, but it was just a weird thing just came up in my urine when I went to the bathroom, and it was like maybe the size of a penny, like it was kind of large, but I only noticed it after I had pushed the flush thing. So like I saw it and it went down, but yeah, it wasn't. I guess it was kind of like tissue, but a little more dense than that, and like about the size of a penny, kind of large. Um, yeah.
Um, can you get into the experience where you felt you were coming back into your body? But I'm asking what happened to your body while you were out of it.
Right. And I've been wondering about that because, and I think part of the trouble that we have is that we are very dichotomous, the way that we think, the way our brain works. We want yes or no, black or white, and we're either in the body or out of the body, right? And I think that there's also the question of our perception of time when we have to think about that. Because if I look at the video of when it happened to the three of us, you just see us kind of zoning out. We stop speaking at the same time, and then immediately we're having the experience of coming back without really noticing an experience of leaving. And so I honestly don't know if maybe there's some kind of time dilation that happens where things happened out of body, but really in this physical realm, it was such a short, a short snip of time where maybe if somebody could measure it somehow, we were really only out of body, for the blink of an eye. So our body just, and maybe that's when we stopped talking at the same time. And then immediately we come back, but who knows how much time actually happened, in whatever dimension we were taken to or whatever happened. So I was really hoping to watch back on that video and just to see, like, oh, but unfortunately nothing super intense happens. Although I think simply the three of us having this reaction simultaneously is pretty intense in itself. But yeah, I think, and I think that showed me too that it can be very intense, but it can also be a lot more seamless and a lot more subtle than we think. Because if I hadn't been working with spirit and if I hadn't had experience with star people before, I might have just thought that, oh, I just got a little sick, maybe something's wrong with me, like who knows, maybe my blood pressure, whatever. But now I recognize it. But I think so many times people have experiences with spirit, and I think even with star people, and they just dismiss it for other things because it's not always obvious.
Okay.
And I think that experience showed that even such an extreme experience where we all together felt we were taken out of body and then had physical symptoms afterwards, at the time was so quick. So yeah.
Now, when does the blue being story come into play?
So there's a few blue being experiences. One of the most memorable ones, and I did make a drawing of that, but I forgot to share with you, was connected to the implant in my nose. I was again, I had this trance experience, and I don't know if they put me in a trance because of, maybe I am able to get into that state easier than some people, and that's why I'm also a medium. I don't know if mediums are able to more easily, or I don't know. But often when they arrive, they put me in this trance state, and I'm kind of in and out of body. So this one night I was in this trance state, and this blue being showed up, and she felt kind of female, but not totally. It was a little bit of both in that way. But she felt very royal, very regal, and she started putting something in my nose. And then in the drawing, there's like jewelry and stuff on her. It kind of felt a bit Egyptian, but she was blue. And so she put this thread or something into my nose, and I remember it went around my head, and then it was like tied, and after tying it, the experience was over, and I was like, are you just gonna leave me with this on? Like, what is this? But I don't know to what extent it's a physical implant, if it's astral, or if they're simply working on the energy and my brain interprets it as this is what happened. I don't know, but that was one of the experiences with the blue beings.
So
and then
So this person was humanoid?
yeah, it looked like like an ancient Egyptian style of person, with like the head stuff and like but they were blue. Yeah, like a darker blue. Yeah, that was humanoid. Yeah. And then I had a different experience with blue orbs, which, I intuitively knew they were blue beings, but they were showing themselves just as blue orbs of light at that time. And this was when my cat had an allergic reaction to a vaccine. She was very, very sick, and I was really, really very worried. And, I was kind of upset with spirit, with my guides, with everyone. How could you let this happen? Somebody help me, like help me, help. Why does she need to suffer? Make her feel better, And then that night, she was laying next to me, and I started to feel. I didn't see, but I started to feel the blue beams, like the energy. And then I look at her, and I see three blue orbs like around her. And then I see her get startled, and she like runs off. And I'm like, oh, they really were working on her. And she wasn't healed overnight from that, but she did start to progress and get better. And maybe they just helped with, her feeling of the pain. I don't know exactly what they did, but she started to improve after that. So yeah.
I've interviewed a few that had orbs come into them and healed whatever ailments they had.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
Getting back to the golden, like the yellow orb you talked in the beginning. My dad had a 4-inch golden orb come into his
Really?
bedroom basement window. He had a really bad cold, so my mom he wanted to stop my mom from sleeping, whatever, and so he woke up one night, and as soon as he woke up, like the timing's perfect with him. This 4-inch golden orb came in through the basement window and crossed from one end to the other and flew back out. He tried to grab it, of
Wow.
course, but the way he described it was like something was moving inside like that. And that really reminded me of perhaps it could have been like lightning per se, as you talked about in the beginning. So
Right? Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how it goes in the house like that.
Hmm.
Wow. You know what? That's so crazy that he tried to grab it. I can't even imagine when I'm experiencing stuff like that. I'm so like, that's really cool of him that he tried to grab it. That's really badass.
So regarding your Mantid experience, was that like a physical one or
Yeah, so let me see. Let me go. Uh, okay. I don't know. I don't know where I am on my timeline anymore. But let me go over the Mantid stuff and
Mhm.
then just the stuff for like from this year, I guess. So the Mantis started. I think I was now when I look back, I think it started on when I was on my way to the Arthur Findlay College when I saw that purple column of light. Because now I know now that I've developed a relationship, I know that when I see these purple orbs or purple columns of light, that it is the mantis being that works with me that I'm seeing. Um, I do feel like she feels female to me, and I do feel like she's been with me through different lifetimes. But I've been conscious of it in this lifetime since that trip. And there has been visitations where um, it's like a light vibration. It's not as intense as when they come and work on my body. That's like a very paralyzing, strong vibration. But when the mantis shows up, it's more of like a lighter, it's so like it's so much love. It's so light and so loving, and the entire room turns this magenta purple color, um, which is still kind of fascinating to me. But that's I don't know why. That's just the color energy that she vibrates at. And then I think so I started to feel the mantids this way. And again, like with everything else, I didn't think too much about it, just kind of kept going with my life. But actually the day we did the table tipping, um, we were asking some questions about the mantids, and it was confirmed that yes, the mantids work with us, all three of us there. And there was also talk about Syrians and the Lyrans or Lyrans. So I feel like there's, I don't like to compartmentalize, but that does seem to be some kind of commonality with, races or species or things like that. That they all do work with me, and the morning after we did the table tipping, where we all woke up with swollen ankles, physical symptoms, and stuff like that. We were feeling brave, and we wanted answers, and so we decided to try like a group channeling with them, and we recorded it. And we turned on a bit of static on the radio, just to have like a background noise. And um, two mantid beings came to channel, and one of them was showing my friend Aliza um, um, like a hospital setting, like similar to what you were mentioning. They were showing like babies being born and the mantids helping them go to the right places and things like that. I don't know necessarily the interpretation of it, of what it means, but that's what it was showing her. And then my other friend was also receiving messages about like stuff underwater deep into the oceans and things like that, and just remembering that we're all connected. And this she was just receiving this really feeling of like tranquility, and we didn't get to a lot of actual channeling at that time because the energy became so intense. It's almost hard to move. It feels like you're underwater. It feels like there's this huge weight around you. But then afterwards, when you listen to the recording, you can hear at the very beginning, like before it starts, it just repeats twice. It says brain scan, like two times. And the first time I heard it, I almost threw my phone because it was way more clear than I expected. I was like, oh my God. And, it also reminds me that before a lot of my visitations, I do feel my brain getting scanned. And I believe that they do that every time they interact with us for various reasons, whether to see how to best approach us, or what kind of wavelength are we in, how they can make it, a more seamless or the best possible experience, or who knows, right? Like, who knows what they check for. But I do feel like they can do that.
I believe you had an experience with military helicopters.
Right. So this was when I was living in Wisconsin that this happened. And I was living with somebody who will not be named, but it turns out, again, I knew this then, but didn't make a big deal of it, didn't think about it, but they had worked at Area 51 before. And before we were living together. And, just another coincidence, synchronicity, whatever. But I had a big UFO sighting at that apartment. We were out smoking at the time I used to smoke. And suddenly there was this really large, I don't know how to explain the shape. It's kind of like a square, but diagonally, and I guess a polygon. I don't know. And it was bright and orange and like right in front of us. And I was like, did you see that? And I look at him and he was just kind of like zoned out. And then the shape flies out into the distance and it just becomes larger and smaller and is zooming everywhere. And then it just leaves. And after that experience, is when the military stuff started happening. And again, I didn't connect the two at the time. I didn't even connect with the military at the time, but it was a 3-floor building. I lived on the 3rd floor, so it wasn't a very tall building, just 3 floors. And every once in a while after that, this dark helicopter would show up right at the window, like right at the window. If I reached out my arm, I probably could have touched it. And it happened like about, I think 3 times, 2 or 3 times. I do remember one of them, I was with a roommate, so she saw it too. And we were just trying to make sense of it. And I remember thinking, oh, they're probably just looking at like the electric gauge or something, like you make up stuff. Like I didn't connect the dots at all. But it happened like 2 or 3 times and it would come right at the window. And I remember it was super loud, and I don't know, I've never heard since of a helicopter getting so close to someone's apartment before. But it wasn't until like more recently, maybe last year, that I heard someone else talk about helicopter harassment after experiences. And I was like, oh my God, that must have been what was happening. And I was just so clueless, I didn't even realize. But I really think that that's what was going on. And I don't know what they look for. Clearly they didn't actually come talk to me or anything. So
yeah, but that's illegal.
I don't know.
You can't fly that close.
Really? I didn't even know that it was legal. But yeah, and I would just, make reasons. I don't know. We tried to just, I don't know. I don't know. And how I must have been like 21 at that time. I was pretty young too. I wasn't really into the whole UFO culture or just any of that. I was just living my life, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together at all. But now in hindsight, it makes complete sense, and I think it was definitely connected. But I still don't know what they were looking for. Another weird experience that I had like that was again around 2019. From 2019 on, I was doing a lot of these mediumship practice circles, and one of them, I decided to join one that I'd never been to before, and it was kind of a larger one. There must have been, I don't know, 20 to 30 people there, all people wanting to either give readings or receive readings, and I was there to give a reading. So I joined it, and I was home alone, and I joined the circle on my computer, and I'm just sitting there kind of trying to expand my energy, start to become aware of who's here, spirit, whatever. But at this point, I had done quite a few readings. Like I was pretty familiar with what it feels like, the process and everything. And as soon as I expanded my energy like that, I felt behind me like 2. I can only describe this as 2 government officials. Like they were like men in black, but they were like in the astral. It was like it was as if I were to feel a spirit, but instead I was feeling these government people. And I tried to make sense of it for a minute, tried to give it the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it is someone in spirit that worked for the government, but it didn't feel right. And it started to feel kind of intrusive, And I was like, well, that's it. I left the circle. I didn't even join. I haven't joined that group. It's and I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what it was, but um I mean, if I were to try to make sense of it, I believe that the government does use remote viewing. I believe that the government does use remote viewing and people with abilities to be able to tune into certain frequencies to see what people are up to. I know this is a very controversial thing to say, but I would have thought that it was completely insane years ago. But now, after things that I've experienced, and people that I've met, I don't think that that's very far out at all. I think if certain businesses use remote viewers to make their stock market decisions, why wouldn't the government use that kind of intelligence to make all kinds of other decisions, or simply to just gain knowledge and information?
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, my Astro Man in Black experience.
You had this experience with the Mantid where he put something on your liver.
That's right. I forgot about that. I'm glad you're reminding me of these things. So that was at my mom's house. A lot of my most recent experiences actually have been happening when my mom and I are together. And I don't know if it's because she's also an experiencer and it just kind of like amps it up, or if they use the opportunity or what it is. But it was kind of a simple one. I was laying in bed and I just, it's that feeling. Now you just know, I'm like, oh, they're here. And I know that there's nothing I can do other than calm myself down, and all of the experience happened. It was this large mantis. And it wasn't the female purple one that I'm more familiar with. It was a male figure, and he was more like brown in color, I guess. And he just had this glowing green orb, and he just placed it over my liver. And I don't know, that was the whole experience. And then he was gone. I don't know what it did. I think it's possible that they do healings before we even know that we are ill. I think in our energy bodies, they can already see that something would develop. So it could be something like that. Or I don't know. I guess I don't have the answer, but that was the experience. And I had other experiences with my mom at that house. She doesn't live there anymore, but some of the pictures I sent you were from that same room where the mantis showed up. There's like spirit faces on the light. I don't know if you could see that. So we were just asking our guides and loved ones in spirit to show themselves. And then I would just take a video of the light shifting on the wall, and it would shift into different faces. And some of them are spirit, and you can see them. But there was one where it was just this little, I don't know who they are, but I've seen them at my mom's house sometimes around her when I stay the night there. And they look like grays, I guess, but they're very small. And they're a bit softer than grays. Like they feel almost watery. I don't know. They're shaped like grays, but there's something very liquid about them. And they have these bright blue eyes. And they're very childlike. And it was the day after, or a couple of days after, I had seen them in that room, that I saw that they showed up on the light too. And I mean, I think maybe if you hadn't seen the being right before, you might just dismiss it, for oh, it kind of looks like a face. But to me, it looks so similar to what I saw, and like that small childlike feeling to them. So I don't know much about them, just that they showed up on that after.
A friend of mine also saw a small gray, which she would think would be a child, let's say, but the gray had blue eyes too.
Really? That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an entire different species. I don't really know, but even the energy felt very playful, very childlike, very light. My experience with other grays, sometimes they just feel more, business oriented or more serious. But these were very, almost like they were just around and they were just curious, and they were like, oh, like, what are you about? I don't know. Yeah.
I also had an experience with two mantids with where you had vertigo after the experience.
That's right. And that was crazy. So, because everything else is not crazy, right? But yeah, it was during a meditation. I saw two mantis beings, and they, like, I could see their arms, like their arms like this, and they were spinning this cube. And I don't know what that was about, but they were spinning this cube. It does sometimes invoke this feeling of like spinning reality, or spinning some situation, something like that. But they also took me to, like, I just kept hearing, it's time for you to explore different dimensions. And then I was taken out of my body. And at some point, it felt like I was in space, like it looked, I don't know if that's my brain creating that or what it was, but it felt like I was in outer space. And there were two very distinctive things there. First, I saw this being, which to me, it felt male, but it's very bizarre. He looked like a giant like Rubik's cube, but I think that's the only way that I could perceive him because he's not from this dimension, and it was just so foreign from my idea of reality that the only way my brain could process it is this living, breathing Rubik's cube being. So I saw that, and then I was taken through this doorway, and the door would like spin diagonally, and it just had to do with like preparing your body for dimensional travel. And then I woke up, and that was the end of it. And then the next day is when I woke up with vertigo. And I had vertigo for like a good week, and it was really bad. Like I couldn't even work. It really, really affected me. I couldn't even stand up straight. But what was interesting is that I got a text message from a friend the day after, and she also has experiences with mantids, but it was so random. I hadn't talked to her for maybe 6 months, and the text message, all she says is, "Have you been having vertigo or problems with your hearing lately?" And I was like, "Oh my God, just yesterday, And she's like, "Yeah, a couple of us have been experiencing that after a mantis experience." And I was like, "Oh my God, like it just happened to me," and she had no idea. So yeah, so I think a lot of my experiences are more out of body and astral experiences than physical, but I think that whatever happens to our astral bodies, there's a bit of a delay, but then it affects our physical bodies. Yeah, even the experience I had where the triangle showed up on my forehead, I had the experience, and then the triangle showed up like the following day during the nighttime. I don't know, maybe like 20 hours after. Yeah.
Now, I've heard people talk about hearing click sounds when mantids are around.
Oh yeah.
Hear that?
Yeah, I do hear that. I do hear that. And to me, it sounds like it's coming from behind my neck. Like it's not just in the room. It's like it's almost in my neck. It's super weird. But I do hear that clicking. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So then
yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I guess I can talk about my experience with that triangle on my forehead, and then I can talk about the stuff that happened this year with I think like ant people. It was different than the grays. So I'll talk about that, and then I don't know, whatever else comes up. So I was reading a book, just living my life, reading a book, and then this orange orb appeared. First, it was like a portal was opening up in the room. It just looked, like desert heat, all like things are like turvy.
Oh, yeah.
And then an orange orb appeared, and it just flew into my chest. And I was like, "Whoa, what the heck!" Like it all happened so fast. I couldn't even, I didn't even have time to be scared. And it was just like, whoop. And then I was put into this trance. It was so fast. Like I was just reading, and then like I was just like this, and I saw myself being lifted. I saw like the trees underneath me. It was really like I was being raised up. And then I was in this room. It was just a silver wall behind me and a silver wall in front of me, and it looked like a great being. And the way that my brain was able to make sense of what was happening is I basically saw him like take a cartridge out of my brain and put a new cartridge in, almost like a Nintendo, like a Nintendo cartridge. And again, I do think that they show me certain things kind of cartoonish because they know that that's how I'll handle it better. So then I had this experience, like they got the new cartridge in, whatever that meant, and then I was back in my body, and I was like, well, that was weird. Probably my imagination, I just kind of dismissed it because it was so cartoonish, so random. And then, the day goes on. I wake up the next day and I'm just washing my face. And then whatever, like later that night, I'm getting ready for bed, and that's when I noticed it. And it was on the same side that I saw felt the cartridge thing, and it was like right here. And at first, it was just two, and you can see that it's made of like little dots. I don't know, it's weird. It was hard to get a picture that would focus right. And then it wasn't until the following night that a third line appeared. So it was like they didn't all show up at the same time. And then as they healed, it kind of remained in like a triangle shape. Now I can't really see it anymore, but in the last picture, like there's a progression of like, you can see that it kind of stayed there.
So you're in the progress of writing a book?
Yeah. So um, I started to get a lot of channelings about that, about how spirit communication works on their end, and like kind of quantum physics type of stuff about it. I don't know if any of it actually coincides or connects to the actual science that we know of at this point, but I feel like it's a way of them to just expand our awareness of what we're capable of, what we're actually made of, energetically, how things work. And it's kind of connects to that. But right now it's all kind of messy and just in handwritten. And so I have to put it on the computer and actually make it legible and make sure that I can actually read what I wrote because yeah. So yeah.
Now, regarding your website, Medium Stephanie, I believe, is that, like, do you offer services?
Yeah, I do. I've been doing a lot of just free readings on Instagram, a lot of them in Portuguese for the Brazilian public, but I definitely offer readings in English as well. I do astrology stuff also on my website. And I'm going to be having an event on the 29th, just doing group mediumship readings, for anyone that wants to connect to the loved one or just have an experience like that. So yeah, they can go check that out.
Stephanie, do you have a closing statement or perhaps another story that you might want to share with everyone?
I could talk about the and people experiences that happened more recently.
Yeah,
And then I can think of if you have time. I don't know
sure.
if you, okay. So that was earlier this year, and I was staying at my friend Elisa's house, and I went to sleep on her couch in the living room, and there I was sleeping, and then suddenly I get the paralyzing light. It's like this white light, and you're just paralyzed. I'm like, okay, here we go. They're here again. Just stay calm. It's gonna be fine. And then I see this portal like open up in her living room, like it almost looked like a hallway portal. And then there's the I can only describe them as the ant people in there. I mean, the bodies were kind of like grays, but they're more brown. They were just a bit different. It felt intuitively like it would be connected to what the Hopi would refer to as the ant people. Um, and then they started working on like my eyes. It just felt like I was taken to a different room astrally, and there's just a lot of pressure on both sides of my head. I could hear like noises, I could hear sounds, and like my vision kept going like in and out. And then I would see this window, like while they're working on my eyes, when I would gain vision again, I would see this window with these stripes on it, almost like blinds, but not quite, just I don't know, it was this specific window. And then before I knew it was over, and then I just woke up and I was shocked at how quickly it went by. I think I expected it. I don't know. It was, who knows what goes through your head after something like that. But it felt like they were working on my eyes for some reason, or around my head. But it felt very loving. It felt very, very positive. It wasn't as scary as previous experiences. I think over the years, I've kind of learned that, okay, this year I just need to relax and it'll be fine. Even when they work on your body, it's fine. And then about a month after that, I was just feeling off. Sometimes it'll happen where I just start to feel like I need to lay down and take a nap. It feels like we call it like a spirit nap, because what it feels like is that you're about to like either get a download of information or some kind of connection, and they just want you to be at a more relaxed state for it. So you start to feel like your body like shutting down. I was like, okay, I need to lay down. So I go and I lay down, and they came again. It's just again that big bright white light and the paralyzing vibrations. And um this was at my house, and my body was paralyzed, but they were moving my body. So like my body was moving, but it wasn't me who was moving it. Like they were moving my legs, changing positions, and they were working on my back. I don't know what they were doing, but they were doing something like between my shoulder blades. And after that, I had like I had back pain for a couple days, like adjusting to it. Now I'm fine again. This was very recently, just like a couple weeks ago. Now I'm fine again. So that happened. That's the latest thing that happened. Um, and I don't know, again, I feel like they help to remove blocks that keep me from fulfilling my purpose or living, my most expansive life in this lifetime. And I feel that I think that they work alongside our loved ones in spirit. Not necessarily that they work together, but I do feel like everyone kind of agrees on the higher purpose that we're all to expand with the frequency of love and remember how connected we are and how capable we are and how much we can go through and still expand and still overcome. And I think that for whatever reason, which I don't know, I think that's everyone's mission in a way in this lifetime, to overcome the difficulties and remember that no one can stop you from feeling love and from vibrating at that frequency. That's my closing statement.
Oh, fascinating. Thank you so much for coming on today, really, Stephanie. You've gotten a pretty cool story, and I'm looking forward to having your book out there. So thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it was really fun.
It was. And to those watching, hope you enjoyed today's interview. I'm your host, Mr. Great. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So, take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Great, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.